Hey guys, it's Norm from Tested, and I am here at San Francisco Center for the Book. I'm here with Rhiannon Alpers, and you're here to teach us about letterpress, right? I've heard about letterpress, and I've seen, letterpress cards, business cards, greeting cards, booklets. It's not something I know too much about. What is letterpress?
Letterpress is a style of relief printing where the roller or cylinder comes in contact with the paper. So it creates a relief. That's where that comes from.
It's a printing technique, and people use this over 200 years ago, before we had mechanical type and manually printed. What did they use it for?
Well, originally it was invented in 1440s. Johannes Gutenberg invented it as the first movable type, so the letters could be interchanged, and it has been used as the major form of printing since then, up until the early 1900s, when lithography sort of took hold, and offset printing, and then now that digital printing has become more prevalent, it's sort of dying off in a way, and different people are taking hold of it.
You mentioned movable type, so that's the idea of having individual letters and characters and actually physically placing them and then actually pushing that against ink and onto a sheet of paper, right?
Exactly. We have a collection of lead type and wood type that all the students or the renters can use to typeset, is what it's called, when you put the letters together to spell the words, paragraphs, books that you want to say, and then you can interchange them to print inside the press.
Now, letterpress became less prevalent with with modern types of printing, with digital printing, but we hate printers. No one likes using printers at home. We've actually seen more letterpress pop up recently. Why has it become more popular these days?
I mean, just one theory would be that the more obscure something becomes, the more precious it is in a way, and that's something I find with a lot of people that come in here, is they're drawn to it because it is more obscure and it's more difficult and more process oriented, and so it brings something new to the impression that's made.
So you say more difficult, so someone can't just type up something on a computer, press print, and it's going to be on a letterpress machine. You have to actually, like behind us, physically print it. So can you walk us through that process in these machines and how that's done?
So you would start with an idea, and let's say that's a word or a phrase or an image, and you would decide how you were going to get it into this machine. So that would be either carving it through linoleum, it would be typesetting it through lead, so each individual letter and grouping it together, or it'd be making a digital file and then creating a negative and then creating a polymer plate and then putting that in there. So there's several ways you could do it.
And that polymer plate has relief, so it actually you can feel the actual image that you design on a computer.
It can. Well, actually, it's kind of funny because traditionally in letterpress, that impression was taboo. A truly fine letterpress printer got no impression at all on the surface of the paper. But as it became, let's say, less and less normal to be doing letterpress printing, in recent time, that's sort of a signifier because it's so difficult to tell that it is letterpress. Sometimes printers use that extra punch inside the paper to sort of showcase that it is letterpress. And
it's definitely very hip.
Well, and it's like, I'm letterpress,
Right.
That it sort of shouts out to the person, like, pay attention that this is a precious object you're looking at.
So there are many different machines used for letterpress, and we're standing in front of one right now. Let's go over to some machines so you can tell me a little about it. All right, so tell me about this machine.
Okay, so this is a floor model Chandler & Price, and it's motorized by foot treadle, so it's powered by the person running it. And it's got 3 rubber rollers here that are rolling over a polymer base with an image on there, and then they're going to roll over there twice. And then the machine itself is going to close and clamps and makes an impression, and the printer takes the piece of paper out and places in a new piece, and the process goes over again.
Yeah, it's a real manual process, and you really feel like you're actually making that press yourself, even though there's a lot of machinery going on.
Right.
All right, Rhiannon, so this is a second type of machine. It looks a little more mechanical. Maybe there's no foot pedal here. What is this machine?
So this is a Vandercook Model 4. It is mechanized in a different way than the other press was. It has 5 rollers plus a drum underneath, whereas the other one only had 3. So it's a lot more advanced in different ways. So it's a cylinder press, which means that there's a cylinder rolling over the image instead of a clamshell, which was the style we were looking at before, where it's a clam opening and closing, and this is a cylinder.
So for the clam one, the paper's always flat. Does that mean you can use thicker sheets of paper that normally wouldn't go through a cylinder?
Definitely. You can use coaster, chipboard, all kinds of very thick and untraditional materials can go in there. You know, not metal, not wood, but a lot of different kinds of paper can fit in that machine, whereas this has to be able to go around the circle of the cylinder to be able to work.
And so we want to call out, we're actually making some business cards here, because letterpress is often used for business cards, and we actually wanted some business cards for our site, and so I worked with you to design these, and the process was not what I expected. We had designs on a file, computer file, and vectors obviously work because you can scale them, but this is done with the polymer plate, so there was no actually type with this, right?
So it's vector only. If you're using pixel-based images, you run the risk of being able to see the pixels in a way that you generally can't on a digital print. So we generally use vector-based images or vector-based artwork, and the artwork itself goes through a process of becoming a negative through a service bureau and then comes back, and we actually make the plates here. All the artwork has to be divided up into how many colors there are, and then when we get these negatives, we make one plate for each one, the connecting factor being the crop marks. So the crop marks would be the same on all of them as a guide for us to find what's called registration for the images to align perfectly. So we take this negative and we put it in a machine which exposes a polymer plate to UV light for anywhere between 3 and 6 minutes, depending on the style. And then we put it in what's called a washout unit, and brushes actually wash away the surface of that plate until only the items that have been exposed to light are hard and they stay. And then we dry it and harden it again to UV light so that it can withstand the several hundred pounds of pressure that the press exerts on it.
And that sounds much easier than actually laying out type, or less time consuming. And the turnaround for this is actually pretty quick, right?
It is. So in a shop like ours where we have access to most of the things here, we did the design files that you gave us here, and with the help of Jeff, we sent out the file for the negative, and then we made the plate here, and then put the sticky back on it, and here it is on the press. So 2/3 of those items happened within the shop.
And even after you make the plate, there's a lot of trial and error for the actual printing, so you have a finished product that you're happy with. And what does that process entail?
Well, so things that Jeff did today to get this press ready were that he put the base inside the press and did what's called locking it up to get it in exactly the right spot. And then he aligned it on, this is a gridded base, which means that it helps you get things aligned by allowing you to lay things down on a grid. Then he inked up the press. We used rubber base black ink, and he has to get just the right amount of ink or you'll have too much or too little or the color won't come out. So he had to also level the rollers to the exact height that they needed to be for this project and this base. And then he starts doing testing to get the alignment of the paper and the base to be together in register.
And even for colors, like we're using black for this one, but choosing colors, you actually have to go through a Pantone book and mix colors too, right?
Yeah. Pantone books, you can order inks that are pre-mixed like paint. That's one way to get ink. And the other way is very much like painting, where you would mix 3 or 4 or 5 colors together to make a PMS color.
All right, Rhiannon, we talked about typesetting a little bit earlier. This is not actual making the polymer plate. The old way, before there were polymer plates, you actually had to pick out the individual letters. And so that looks like this. What is this?
So this is a pre-typeset, what's called a lockup, and that means that it's got all of the furniture, which is the wood pieces here, and the coins, which lock it into place so it can be lifted and carried to wherever you're working on it. There are sort of 2 styles of printing, one where you're pre-doing everything, and then you're just setting into the press and printing it. And then what we saw, which is kind of an opposite way, Jeff had everything already set in the bed of the press, which is the flat surface, and he printed it, and then he's going to put everything away. So sometimes you want to have everything set up ahead of time, and take it wherever you need to do. So this is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different kinds of lead type in here set up for this, what was a postcard several years ago.
And so like the furniture here is made of wood, and the leading here is metal. And so you're actually using different types of material because they have different properties that lend themselves to printing, right?
Totally. So the wood has a little bit of give in it, and it allows to sort of push against it but not change its shape or bend it in any way. And the lead itself needs to stay in a firm shape, so it's made of lead, which is somewhat soft but not super hard. So the combination of the two is a good mix for this process.
And learning typesetting, that's something that you teach people how to do here. How difficult is that? Like, could someone just walk in, take a seminar, and walk away knowing how to do that, or is it more in depth?
Well, we do have one evening class where you try your hand at setting type, and it's a skill that takes practice, but it's really not difficult. It just takes a little bit of concentration and being able to read backwards and upside down. So
that is a unique skill.
And at some point, I can read upside down and backwards really well, so then I can tell when things are, misspelled or misset. But it does take a little bit of practice.
Could you give us a demonstration of typesetting? Yeah, and how long that would take?
Okay, so what we're holding here is called a job stick. This is where you would compose your type. And let's say we had a little reference, something to work from that we had pre-written. And then we would be setting our type from right to left, and it's going to be upside down and backwards as we're setting it. And then we're going to set our lines from bottom to top, and you can only set about 4 to 5 lines at a time. And you tie them up with a little string on what's called a galley. It's a surface that you hold it on, and then you would move on to your next 4 or 5 lines. So it's going to happen very slowly, but yeah. Do you want to give me a word to spell?
Yeah, how about tested? T-E-S-T-E-D. Let's see that typeset.
So we're going to start with a space. Let me just find a space for us.
And this is something that they have to consider, not only the characters, but the spacing before, in between, and between the lines. Everything is laid out.
Well, something that never happens on the computer is that you run out of letters, right? You would never run out of T's or never run out of E's. But in this case, the only letters we have at our disposal are the letters that are in the drawer.
Right.
So if we run out of E's, then we have to either print that, put it away, or distribute it is what it's called, and then start again, or choose a different drawer. So you're very limited by what you have access to as how much you can print in one sort of go. So there's tested.
Very cool. And then if we wanted to end it there, you would just tie a rope around it?
So let's say we wanted to change it to just this length. This job stick can actually change sizes in a very analog way. Okay, so then we could put a little bit of spacing, which is on either side, and then we could put a piece of leading, top and bottom, and tie it up with a piece of string and save it for later, or go ahead and go right to the press.
Wow, awesome. And like you mentioned before, at SF Center for the Book, you guys teach typesetting, you teach how to use the letterpress machines, and you also rent out your machines, time with the machines, right?
That's right. So you start at the very basic level would be Intro to Letterpress, where you come for an evening and you try out all the machines we have to see what you like. And then you could take a core class, which is a multiple week or multiple day class that would get you qualified on the machine to work on your own. So that's the goal, is that each person walks away being able to use the machine on their own while we're here. So then once you're qualified, you can come and rent time during the day or during the evening to print your own projects, and depending on the skill level you have, you can typeset things yourself and print them, or if you have that knowledge and access to do polymer plates, you can also print those as well.
Well, thank you so much, Rhiannon. I learned a lot. Letterpress I definitely feel like I have to take a class now, and those business cards look great. And so that's it from San Francisco Center for the Book. I'm Norm, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.